You're about to go Inside PR on the FIR Podcast Network.
This is Inside PR 4.19 for Wednesday, August 12th. This week, the internet is dead.
You're listening to Inside PR.
Welcome to another episode of Inside PR, our weekly look at the world of social media, communications, public relations, marketing, digital marketing, and where everything meets and intersects. I'm Martin Waxman in Toronto.
I am Jenny Dietrich in Chicago.
And I'm Joe Thornley in Ottawa.
And here we are, another week closer to the end of summer.
Oh, don't say that. I'm so sad.
Okay, another week closer to the middle of summer.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Just for me.
Okay, which is where we are. So, Joe, without further ado, since, time is rushing away, why don't we get started with our Inside PR must-know for this week?
Well, we have an uncommon first Inside PR must-know, IPR must-know, and time is passing by. First, it was David Letterman who left, and just last week it was Jon Stewart, and now it's Neville Hobson, who after more than 10 years as Shell Holt's co-host on For Immediate Release, the Hobson and Holtz Report, Neville is packing away his microphone and his headphones, and he's going to stop podcasting. This is a big thing and something that we should know because he will be doing it for one more month with Shell. There will probably be a big goodbye from a lot of people. Shell and Neville were probably the first public relations and communications podcasters, and they've been doing it for 10 years. They used to do it twice a week, reliably once a week for the last 10 years, and Neville has been part of this. They've done their podcast across the Atlantic so that it was an inconvenient time for either Shell or Neville. Very often they'd be recording on Sunday evening in London, and he just kept on going like the Energizer Bunny. But now he's packing it in. Big day for podcasting from a remarkable guy.
Well, we're going to miss his accent. I'm going to miss his accent.
Yeah, I think we all are, in his point of view and his sense of humor. But, hey, Neville, we wish you well, and you're always welcome to have a seat on Inside PR.
Yes, you
As
are.
the fourth. You want to join us? We just put that out there. Okay, so I'm going to go next, and mine comes from the New York Times, from a reporter, journalist, Natasha Singer, who writes columns probably every month or 6 weeks, critical of technology. And the headline for this one is "Twisting Words to Make Sharing Apps Seem Selfless." And it's a really interesting perspective on the various sharing apps like Lyft, like Airbnb, like Uber, and how they're positioning themselves as something you share, and typically sharing was something you did, when you wanted to do good, but really they're businesses. It's quite a fascinating piece, very thoughtful, and one thing she points out is that according to the AP Style Guide, they do not call Uber or Lyft ride-sharing apps. They call them ride-hailing or ride booking. So twisting words to make sharing apps seem selfless.
On Sunday, I was scrolling through Facebook and discovered an article called "Facebook's New Patent Could Make You Rethink Your Friends List." And essentially what it is they've secured a patent that could help filter spam emails and offensive content, improve searches, and allow lenders to use their social habits to determine a credit approval. In the U.S., that mortgage lenders, any sort of lender that you're going to get a car, you're going to get a house, or whatever you are borrowing money for, they have a certain criteria that they can use to determine whether or not you deserve the loan. Social Security number, it's based on Social Security number. It could be, if you've ever missed a credit card payment, if you've ever missed a mortgage payment, whatever it happens to be, there's certain criteria. Well, now they're saying that a lender could use your friends on Facebook as one piece of criteria to determine whether or not you deserve that loan. And what they do is they look at your friends and determine whether or not they have a credit score that is supportive of you deserving the loan. Everything that I've been reading says if you have a high credit score, it doesn't really matter. But if you have a lower credit score, it could matter what the people you've surrounded yourself with. So now we have to look at, do we need to be unfriending friends from high school who may not have a high credit score just so that it doesn't affect us? Now, in the U.S., there is a law that allows for equality and all those kinds of things, so it could not actually go through, but it's something very interesting to pay attention to, that lenders could eventually be looking at your friends to determine whether or not you deserve a loan.
Well, I think part of the point of this is you got to hang out with people who live in way bigger houses than you do. No, I actually find it scary too. I find it scary if you extrapolate it to insurance too, because if your friends are, say, bad drivers,
right,
does that impact your rate for your insurance? You know, all of these things. I mean, really, there are so many privacy issues. We may want to do a show in the next few weeks just on privacy and the state of privacy in 2015. Joe, I know you'll have a lot to say on that.
Well, you know, Ginny, when you introduced it and you were talking about in the United States as the context, one of the things that I find interesting is we all invent things, we all create things. And as we create them, we are bound by our own context. We are operating within an environment. Mm-hmm. And I think that one of the things that The Right to Be Forgotten really illustrated was that there are different values and different ways of approaching things like privacy around the world than the way they are approached, where a lot of these applications are based. This, it strikes me, is another one of those. For example, in Canada, and I'm sure that if we were to look at other countries, there are different ways of treating consumer data and financial data. So we have something called the Financial Consumer Agency of Canada, which is actually charged with protecting and educating consumers of financial services on their rights and their obligations. And that agency works with banks and others who have access to our financial data to make sure that they educate us, that they don't take advantage of us, and that they are always on the right side of the line voluntarily. We soon have Apple Pay coming to Canada. You already have it in the States. We'll have it here probably in a month. I look at something like this this Facebook patent, and it strikes me here again, this is something which Facebook is moving forward on with real enthusiasm in the United States, but it may well play differently here in Canada and in other countries because different countries have different restrictions on what people can and cannot do with financial data that I give up voluntarily or that others compile about me.
There's a lot to think about for all of this, and we're again in that state of never-ending flux about seemingly everything to do with communications, privacy, financial data, personal data. You know, who knows where we're going? Hopefully, though, we can, continue to live in societies that, are free.
We come together over the internet, on social media, on social networks, as individuals connecting with others that we have common interest in. And in effect, our context is the common interest that we have when we come together. In a way, we are separate in that interaction from our corporal beings, the people who we really are back home, and we live in different national contexts. And I think this is one of the ongoing tensions with social networks and social media. People joked about how Mark Zuckerberg had his own world back when it was known that Facebook had crossed 1.49 billion users, because only 100 years ago there were only 1.49 billion people in the whole world. And in effect, he does. And it coexists with where we are for the rest of our lives.
So we all live in the Zucker world.
Right.
Versus the Earth, just wait till he petitions or buys the sponsorship rights to name our planet. Boy, I'm sure that's coming. Anyway, Joe, one thing you said about being together with common interests really is a great tie-in to our topic this week. And I will admit, I am a big sucker for all those posts that say something is dead or something has finally died. So when I saw the headline, 2015 is the year the old internet finally died, and there was a great picture of a burned out cathode ray tube monitor. Yes, okay, I was drawn to it. Now, it was from Vox, so okay, that does elevate it. At least I hope it does. I think it does. And it's a fascinating piece talking about some things that have happened recently in, social media about Gawker with their managing partners deciding to pull a story and the shift between editorial and business and who has the power there. Dissolve ceased publications. Viral Nova, an online aggregation site, sold for $100 million. Reddit's interim CEO, Ellen Pao, was really kind of pushed out by the internet mob over a firing that, we later found out had virtually nothing to do with her. And what seems to be happening is mainstream social media is becoming more and more commercialized. And the things we used to like about the internet, all of those quirky blog sites, the communities that you would find on those sites, have started to, if not disappear, certainly, seem like they're going underground. And social media is behaving a lot like media. Traditional media was, say, 10 or 15 years ago when they had a lot of power succumbing to ads. So the question is, what does that mean for us as communicators?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, the Gawker thing, which I wrote about on Spin Sucks because I was really interested in this whole idea that you would take down a story and that had originally been posted just because A, of your vision, and B, because they're all about getting links. But they eventually took it down, and Nick Denton said, these are the stories we used to do, but times have changed, which I think is really interesting that they're thinking about a cultural change internally that supports where this is all going, and that we all have a responsibility to check the facts and understand what's being reported, whether or not it's true. If it's true, how far are you going to dig into that? And I've even noticed myself digging deeper into stories and blog posts before I publish them. So it may take me a week or two longer to publish something, and I'm sort of less on my soapbox than I might have been had I just ripped off a blog post, which I would have done 5 years ago. I don't do that anymore. So I think it's an interesting interesting look at how our responsibility has shifted among journalists and bloggers to get the story right.
I think that, you've seen it on your site, Ginny, really in a lot of ways. You still get a ton of interaction. But blogs used to be the mainstay of the communities, right? You would post there, and then social media came, and so the community kind of fragmented and moved to social media, and it's something we've talked about. Do you think there's ever a chance that we can get back to that more self-contained state of communities of like-minded interests, or really we're just in this huge kind of ball of commercialization, just like everything else in North America, for example, or like so many things in North America that, you see dollar signs and it just kind of rolls over all the other ideas that, may have some legs, may have something that we're interested in?
I wish I could figure out the key to getting people more engaged around something, but they're just not. I wrote about this last week. It's a different world than it was even just 3 years ago.
Yeah, it sure is. Anyway, we would love to hear from you on that topic. What you think about the way the internet is evolving. Is it becoming the kind of place you want it to be? Is it changing for the worse? Is it becoming too commercialized? Send us your comments. And in a couple of weeks, we wanted to remind you, we have the first episode of the monthly Inside PR Book Club. we will all be reading. So we're reading this, and we encourage our listeners to read this too, The Business of Podcasting by Steve Lubetkin and Donna Papacosta, and to send us your comments. So you could leave them on the blog. You could send us an audio comment, and we would love it if you send us an audio comment, because we would integrate that into the podcast. And in fact, we're hoping that this won't be so much a review, but more of a discussion on the books, and each month we will have a different one. So comments on this week's podcast, comments on the business of podcasting, you can leave them on our blog, as I said, insidepr.ca. Send them to us via insideprcomments@gmail.com. You can catch us on Twitter at inside_PR, at Jenny Dietrich, at Thornley, on the Inside PR Facebook group, on the Inside PR community, on Google+, as part of the FIR Podcast Network, on SoundCloud, and also on iTunes, where we give you a humble plea to leave us a review. So until next week, it's Martin in Toronto.
Jenny in Chicago.
Joe in Ottawa.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Bye.
Bye all.